Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today's subject, we're going to be going over unique abilities within WoW, and these unique abilities we'll be looking at sort of they're basically the Covenant abilities within Shadowlands are the latest addition to it. But before that, you had the Azerite traits in Battle for Azeroth, and before that is where it kind of started with Legion artifact weapon or spells. These are abilities where you get a brand new spell for your class, for your specialization, or just in general for, you know, any sort of random thing. Now, obviously, there has been different abilities throughout World of Warcraft, more specifically, or more class-specific abilities, but that hasn't really come back around until Shadowlands, I believe. Yeah, Shadowlands is probably the best way to bring it back, because the class abilities that I'm mentioning or thinking of are, if you look at WoW Classic, it had multiple class abilities, such as priests having their dwarf fear wards, night elves having star shards, human priests having, I think it's like a curse or something. It drains like mana, I'm pretty sure. It was pretty bad. I'm not going to be looking at these necessarily. I'm going to be looking at more the Legion and the Azerite stuff and the Shadowlands abilities that were given, because this is when they sort of implemented it in the past few expansions, that your class or specialization have gotten a brand new ability, or even two in Shadowlands case. Now, the Legion ones are going to be very different. In Legion, it was perfect, to be honest. This is the first time that they brought it back. They gave every single class sort of unique abilities with their artifact weapon, and they presented it in the form of your artifact weapon, so you would have it for the expansion, and after the expansion it would go away. Now, some of these abilities did become baseline. Some of these abilities became talents in the classes, like trees. So one that I can think of is the Wake of Ashes for Paladin, that kind of thing. And they just felt so good to use with the class. They really blended well with the class that you couldn't necessarily just take it away from them after one expansion. It was something that felt right and should have stayed with the class, which it did. So I'm going to be going over all of them. I'm not too sure how many there will be. There might be a part 2 to this with just the Shadowlands abilities and stuff like that. And yeah, we'll see how long this goes on for, but there are a lot of artifacts in Legion, and this is where we're going to be starting. Now, with Legion, they obviously introduced these artifact weapons, and this was a weapon specialized for your specialization. And this is every specialization within the game that was currently available. I don't think they added any new classes since then. No, they haven't. Demon Hunter was the last class to be added. So you had multiple specs or multiple classes, and what came with them is an average of 3 specializations. So you've made a artifact weapon for each of these specializations. Now, some of them might be lore important. Quite a lot of them are actually lore important. That could be just something completely in itself, but a lot of these gave abilities that were insane, that felt right with the rotation, that absolutely just stuck well with it. that kind of thing. I'm going to be going over, what they basically did. Now, the numbers might be a bit different and they might be a bit crazy. This is because the Legion was a high damaging, high number expansion. And what I mean by that is, in Battle for Azeroth, I believe they dimmed everything, or they number squished everything down. So I'm pretty sure people were hitting like 2 million damage in Legion, that kind of thing. And they squished it in Battle for Azeroth, and they have squished it in Shadowlands, where you're hitting like 16k, 20k maximum, that kind of thing. So some of these numbers might be a bit off, but you just got to bear with, and sort of, I'll kind of try and put it into perspective in terms of Shadowlands numbers, but it's going to be tough. So let's get started with the Demon Hunter. Now, started with the Demon Hunter, obviously, because it's got 2 specializations. It was the class that was added during Legion, so it might have been easier to design these things. But for Vengeance, which is the DPS Demon Hunter, I always get confused between Vengeance and Havoc. So Vengeance, you had Soul Carver, and this is a melee range, and it was a 1-minute cooldown. Now, wait, hold up. I think I got this the wrong way around. Okay, I got this the wrong way. I can't say way. Wrong way around. So, Vengeance is the tank Demon Hunter. My bad. So, it's a 1-minute cooldown. It is Soul Carver. I'm wondering, is it called Vengeance? Or is the, okay, yeah, Soul Carver. So it's a melee range, 1-minute cooldown, and you carve it into the soul of your target, and it deals 490% plus 490% of your fire damage as additional damage, and 3 times 150% of your attack power as fire damage over 3 seconds. It shatters 2 lesser soul fragments from the target, and 1 additional fragment every second. These obviously heal. This was a nice sort of threat, a nice sort of bursty damage, a nice heal baked into it. It was really good for tank Demon Hunters. Now, none of these were bad, to be honest. All of them were very, very good. And the ones that I played through, obviously, I'll go a bit more in depth with, because I know them, I've played with them, I utilise them a lot. But all of these were very good. There was never a bad artifact weapon, and I will say that. Now, obviously, many people might have a different thought on that, but to me, they were all very good, very well designed, and they just did their part. They fitted their class perfectly for me. So for Havoc, which is the DPS Demon Hunter, you have Fury of the Illidari. It's a 1-minute cooldown, and it throws the twin blades of the Deceiver in a whirlwind of energy, and it causes 7 times 100% plus 100% chaos damage over 3 seconds to nearby enemies. Now, this is a massive DPS cooldown, obviously. It's only on a minute cooldown, so it's sort of along the lines of a Stormkeeper for Elemental Shamans, but it was a very... Demon Hunters don't have a lot to press. That's in Shadowlands. They've had 2 expansions to get possibly new abilities, but they just haven't got many. They don't have a lot to press, so having this extra button to press probably helped out the class a lot. There might have been a lot of downtime in some of the buttons that you pressed, but this was just a big burst of damage, and yeah, not too bad overall. It's more of the tamed ones. It's one of the more tamed ones, because it's just you throw your glaive at them pretty much. Nice and simple. So, Death Knight. For Frost, you have Sindragosa's Fury, and this is a 5-minute cooldown, by the way. And the weapons that you actually got for Death Knight were Blades of the Fallen Prince. Now, Blades of the Fallen Prince were Arthas's weapons. These were 2 Frostmourne pieces. So Frostmourne was obviously shattered in Wrath of the Lich King, and these are 2 blades made out of that blade. So 2 one-handed swords made out of this 2-handed sword. And there's just so much lore behind it. It's absolutely insane. But what it does is it summons Sindragosa who breathes frost on all of the enemies within 40 yards in front of you, and it deals 2,000% of your attack power as frost damage, and it slows them for 50%. Now, this is just cool. You summon Sindragosa, who is a blue dragon, and Sindragosa was a boss in the raid of Icecrown Citadel. She was for me, the penultimate boss, because I would usually go to the Plague Wing, then the Blood Wing, and then the Frost Wing, or whatever it is. And yeah, she was the penultimate boss. She was the one who was risen in the Wrath of the Lich King cinematic. You know, Arthur stabs his sword into the ice and then he raises this giant dragon. That is Sindragosa. And yeah, just so much lore behind the blades, so much lore behind the dragon that you summon to actually help you. It was a dragon raised by Arthas, the Lich King himself. It was just really cool. It was a really cool ability. And I think they still have it in sort of kind of a couple, iterations of it. So Death Knights still have the Breath of Sindragosa, where you constantly breathe out damage and it causes you to lose runic power. And they obviously have the big dragon that goes forward and stuns everyone. So this one has been kept in the game in some way, because I don't think they're going to make an entire animation for this dragon stunning ability and not, try and show that off a bit more. For Unholy, you had the blade called Apocalypse, and this was what the spell is called as well. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, and what it does is it strikes the enemy and just deals 400% physical damage and bursting all of the festering wounds on the target. It summons also a member of your summoning a member of your army of the dead for 15 seconds for each of the festering wound. So if you stack up your festering wound, you pop this, you get an army of undead. Very cool, but again, compared to something like Breath of Sindragosa, or whatever it's called, Sindragosa, where a dragon comes out of the ground and stuns them with a frost breath from the sky, this one is just a simple weapon swing. So it's not the flashiest, but it still was a very good DPS. For Blood, you had Consumption. This is a 45-second cooldown. And again, this is very much on the lines of Unholy. You strike the enemies in front of you with a Hungering attack, and it deals 250% physical damage, and it just heals you for 100% of the damage. So Blood Death Knights was obviously, and still is, about, being low on health and dealing damage to get healed by yourself. So this is kind of where this all, spiraled from. It's very much you are your own healer. If you're a Death Knight and you're low on health, you will keep yourself topped up. You will not die and you will keep going, pretty much. But again, it's one of the less flashy ones. It's very much just a strike with the weapon, kind of like the Apocalypse for Unholy Death Knights. Frost Death Knights definitely won it here, with a dragon coming out of the ground and breathing frost breath on them to stun them. For Druid, you obviously have four specializations. We'll start off with the Feral. That is Ashamane's Frenzy. Now, this is a 1.25 minute cooldown, and what it does is you unleash Ashamane's Frenzy, clawing your target 15 times over 3 seconds for 20% of your attack power, and the physical damage, or as physical damage, and an additional 20% of your attack power as bleed damage for 6 seconds, and it awards 3 combo points. So Ashamane was obviously a wild god. He fell in the battle against the Legion, I think he did, but pretty much you encounter him in the Shadowlands, and you know about Ashamane's work. He's a god of pretty much cat. He's god of feral, so he is a cat through and through. And this ability kind of remains in the game with Feral Frenzy for Feral Druids. This is a very good last talent pick for Feral Druids. It awards 5 combo points and stuff like that. So it is very good. Again, not a very flashy one. I imagine that it had the same animation. I'm not too sure about that though, so don't quote me on it. But again, it still made it into the game. It was a very good part of the feral rotation, so I can understand why they kept it, because it felt very smooth to the class. For Restoration, you had Essence of Gehenna, and There's a 1.5 minute cooldown. What it does is release the natural power of Gahanir to increase the frequency that all of your heal over time effects do by 100% for 8 seconds. Obviously, Resto Druids are noticeably the weirder of the healers. They put a lot of healing over time effects on their party members, and they utilise the HOTS, the heals over time, to top up them party members. So having these HOTS on this target at 100% increased effectiveness for 8 seconds is insane. It's a massive 8-second window where no one should be dying, to be honest. And plus, it kind of looked cool. Gahanir is a world tree, I believe. And again, it's not an ability that's super flashy. And I don't believe it's kind of made it into the game, unfortunately. But it was a nice little button to press for a burst heal. You don't get many massive chunky heals as a druid. You get sort of small bursty 1 minute cooldown heals that I've found out. For balance, you have New Moon, and this is from the Scythe of Elune. And what it does, it deals 300% of your spell power as astral damage to the target, and it empowers New Moon to become Half Moon, and then Half Moon to become Full Moon, and so on. And then it repeats the cycle. So this is a spell that became a talent. This is the last talent in balance, and it's one of the funner ones, to be honest, because you're dropping a literal moon on enemies. And let's face it, who doesn't want to do that? Who doesn't want to drop a damn moon on your enemies? So this one obviously made it into the talent tree, the base talent tree of druids or balanced druids. It was a very good spell at the time. The weapon was absolutely amazing, great looking. Elune's scythe obviously had a lot to do with the Worgen curse and stuff like that. You could actually, a little hidden interaction that people might not know is that if you went up to Worgen within Duskwood with the Scythe of Elune, you could cure them of the Worgen curse, and they would be free. They would run off into the woods and, be free as a human again. And that's really cool because no other class can do that. Absolutely no other class. You need this exact weapon to do it. And that's quite a nice little Easter egg. I did 1 or 2 of them. I just stumbled upon it, and it's quite a good little thing that they just put in for Boomkin Druids only. But New Moon was very good. Obviously, it's not the first choice at the moment. You'd go for something like Fury of Elune, but to have this alongside a talent that you wouldn't have had with it would be absolutely amazing, because it does deal some good damage and you can throw it in with your rotation and get some very good damage out of it. For Guardian Druids, you had the spell Rage of the Sleeper, and what this is a 1.5 minute cooldown, and you needed the Claws of Ursok. Ursok being the wild god of bear tanking and stuff like that. He actually had a brother, I believe, Ursok and Ursel. They watched each other's backs. One was sort of fury, one was defensive, that kind of thing. And his story is sad, Ursok's, because he obviously got corrupted by the Emerald Nightmare. You had to go into the Emerald Dream or the Emerald Nightmare raid and kill him. And then you find out in Ardenweald that his spirit is gone forever because of the anima shortage, and it's really sad, to be honest. That is really sad. But that's not what we're on about. Let's get to the spell itself. So it unleashes the Rage of Ursok for 10 seconds, preventing 25% of damage you take and reflecting 250% of attack power as nature damage back to your attackers. So you could do a massive pull with this. You could pop this, you'd take 25% reduced damage, and you'd be absolutely slapping everyone with a shit ton of damage going out because they're hurting themselves with it. So this one might have felt a bit better if you're pulling big groups, but if you're pulling a couple mobs, you kind of don't really want to use it on the mob because it feels less impactful. But for a tank, you want to sort of utilise this as best you can, so you'd be pulling a lot of mobs in this scenario. I don't think this is one that really made it through to the end. Obviously, Guardian Druids have damage reductions and stuff like that, but I don't think it made it through in any of this sort of form. Moving on to the hunters, you obviously have 3 different types. You have marksmanship that we're starting off with, and the spell is called Windburst. So what this is a 1.5 second cast and a 20 second cooldown, which is insane, by the way. And the bow is actually Thastora. I want to say it's that. Thastora, Legacy of the Windrunners. Windrunners obviously being the Windrunner sisters, so Sylvanas, Illyria, and... oh no. Illyria, Sylvanas, and... oh my god, I absolutely cannot remember. Valera? No. Valera's someone completely different. The Windrunner sisters, for fuck's sake. It focuses the power of wind through Thastora, deals 1,000% of physical damage to your target, and leaving behind a trail of wind for 5 seconds that increases your movement speed of allies as well by 50%. This is a 20-second cooldown, 1,000% physical damage. Like, it absolutely slapped, plus you get the mobility of it. Hunters were jumping about all over the place. You're disengaging backwards, and then suddenly you're running 50% faster through this gust of wind, for God's sake. The only thing that I can think of is the gust of wind is Monk's got it, actually, with the Ride the Trail or something, PvP talent, where you go across your serpent kick and it leaves a trail behind you that increases movement speed. So I think they kind of kept that in the game, but just not for hunters, which is sad, really. But incredible just punch of damage, single target, and it's ridiculous, to be honest. It was something else. It really felt like it had a kick when you used it. For Beast Mastery, you had Titan's Thunder, and this is from the weapon Titan Strike. It is a 1-minute cooldown, and what you do is that you discharge a massive jolt of electricity from Titan Strike into all of your pets and dire beasts, and you causing them to deal more ranged attack, or causing them to deal up to some significant amount of ranged attack power as nature damage to the target every 1 second for 8 seconds. And it also causes your next Dire Frenzy to deal 200% of your attack power as nature damage for each of the 5 Dire Frenzy attacks. So it was just a massive buff to your pets. If your pets were connecting to a target, you'd pop this and you wouldn't even have to press anything. Your pets would honestly solo either the player that they're killing or the mob. It was absolutely insane. But there's not really anything flashy. I think they just got there's nothing you can really do in terms of flashy for Beast Mastery Hunter. The flashiest thing that you can do is do Bestial Wrath, which makes your pets sort of angry, giant and red. That's kind of it. So we're moving on to Survival. You have Fury of the Eagle, and what this is a 45-second cooldown. It's also a channeled ability. It's a 4-second cast, and it requires the weapon Talon Claw, Spear of the Wild Gods. So this is a bit weird. This is the first expansion where survival hunters became melee DPS instead of range DPS, because they were always just a shit, range DPS survival hunters, to be honest with you. They never really beat out Beast Mastery or Marksman. They were just kind of PvP orientated, to be honest. So what it does is you furiously strike all enemies in front of you and deals 225% of your attack power as physical damage, and damage increased by Mongoose Fury. So this was just what the ability is now, pretty much. It's Cleave for survival hunters, and that is the spell that they have now, Cleave. That is literally the name, and I believe this is where it stemmed from. It might have been just alongside this. They might have had 2 Cleave abilities, like extra AoE, but it's nothing fancy, it's nothing flashy. It was just sort of something that you'd pop in a group of people and you'd do a significant amount of DPS. So for Mage, you obviously have Frost, which is Ebon Bolt. And you needed Ebon Shield, the great staff of Aladai. Aladai being one of the first Guardians, I believe. And what this does is it deals 900% of your spell power as Shadow Frost damage, and it grants 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. So Ebon Bolt, this is a 3-second cast and a 45-second cooldown, is a massive hit of damage. This is actually a talent for Frost Mages now and still for them to take, and granting the 2 Fingers of Frost charges gives you Ice Lances straight after the damage, so you've got a big burst of damage in that window, and just to have this spell is a massive chunk of damage. You could easily work it into your rotation, even if you just use it as a filler spell, because it didn't do as much damage as say pressing Frostbolt or Frozen Orb or anything like that. So it did a massive amount of damage for 45 seconds, and it also got the Fingers of Frost procs as well, which was great for after the fact it had been casted. For Arcane, you have Mark of Alunith, and what this required was Alunith, Great Star of the Magi. And this is a 1-minute cooldown, a 2-second cast, and it creates a rune around the target, inflicts 100% of your spell power 6 times as arcane damage over 6 seconds, and then it detonates for arcane damage equal 15% of your maximum mana. So there's something kind of similar within the game. It is called Touch of the Magi for arcane mages. This is just baseline, and what it does, it applies a mark to the target, and when you've dealt after 6 seconds it will detonate depending on how much damage you have dealt to that target in that window. So if you dealt 10,000 damage to the target, it would do 1,000 damage. If you dealt 20,000, it would do 2,000, that kind of thing. So it is still in the game, and it is a massive cooldown if you can time it with a load of your bursting, and you can also utilise your mana. Still, you can keep your mana up quite high, and this is actually quite tough for arcane mages, as they are one of the few classes that struggle with mana besides healers in like mythic pluses and stuff like that. So if you can utilise this, it was a very good, but it is still in the game, and they saw it as a way to get a little bit extra sort of burst damage out of the arcane mage in this time. For fire, you have Phoenix Flames, and this is a 45-second cooldown, and it has 3 charges, and it is from the weapon Fellow Malorn. Now, Fellow Malorn is the weapon from Kel'Thas. Kel'Thas wielded it when he fought Arthas, and it shattered, and it got remade, and his... was it his son, Lorthamar? I think, yeah. Took up the blade and fought Arthas, and it didn't shatter when it did previously, that kind of thing. Fellow Malorn is very powerful. All of the mages, like artifacts, were absolutely incredible, by the way. They all had references to like Guardians of Azeroth, that kind of thing. All very, very good, to be honest. Their class hall as well, by the way. Don't get me started on that. I'll probably have to do a class hall one, actually. Thinking about it now. I'm gonna have a look at that one, because it was great. It was great. But Phoenix Flames, 3 charges. It hurls phoenixes that cause 300% of your spell damage as fire damage, and splashes 100% of that spell damage to other nearby enemies, and it will always crit. So fire mages rely on crit. They have multiple fire blasts for guaranteed crits, and this gave them an extra 3 guaranteed crits. Now you obviously want 2 crits in a row to get an instant pyroblast, and then you want 2 more crits to get an instant pyroblast, that kind of thing. That is what mages are built off of. So having 3 charges of this, plus 3 charges of fire blast, 6 guaranteed crits, you got 3 pyroblasts in there. It's absolutely amazing. It was amazing to use. It felt perfect for the class. Phoenix Flames is a baseline for fire mages now. It's not even a talent. But it does no longer crit, which is very sad. It is just a sort of filler spell, and you have to hope that it crits in that time. So honestly, it's absolutely amazing, and it felt so right with the class. For monks, you have Brewmaster, you have Exploding Keg. This is a 1.25 minute cooldown, and it required Fuzan, the Wanderer's Champion. And what it does, it hurls a flaming keg at a target location, deals 1,000% of your attack power as fire damage to nearby enemies, and it causes them to miss their attacks for 3 seconds. This is 3 seconds you're not getting hit by anything as a tank. That's absolutely incredible. That's an immunity, pretty much. So this was absolutely incredible if you're going for an absolutely outrageous pull in like Mythic Plus or something. If you're just looking to stall a fight against a player in PvP, then this is absolutely incredible. But I don't believe Flaming Keg is still in there, like you throw kegs at people, but it's not necessarily like they miss all of their attacks for 3 seconds, I believe. I'm not too sure about that though. For Mistweaver, you had Shailoon's Gift, and what this is a 2-second cast. It required Shailoon Staff of the Mists. It draws in all nearby clouds of mists generated by the staff, healing the target for 200% of the spell power per cloud absorbed. So this is kind of like the chi balls that Windwalker monks get. You pick them up to get 1 chi and heal you for a little bit. Mistweaver monks had sort of the same. There were just these little clouds floating about, and this is what these staff used as sort of a consume effect to heal, and it was a pretty big heal. I played Mistweaver monk in Legion, and it was the most fun that I had ever playing a healer, and it still probably is, to be honest. You're just darting about all over the place. For Windwalker, you had Strike of the Windlord, and this is a 40-second cooldown. And what this does is you require Fist of the Heavens. You strike with both fists at all enemies in front of you, dealing 1,500% plus 1,500% damage and reducing movement speed by 50%. So what this is basically a Fist of Fury, but all in one big punch. So Fist of Fury is obviously channeled over 3 seconds, and you like parry, or you can dodge while doing it, or you can slow while Fist of Furying. But this was just a big punch. This is Fist of Fury all in 1 second. So nice AoE, nice cleave, but not necessarily something that's going to, make you jump out your seat and go, that's a cool ability. For Paladins, you have Eye of Tyr, and what this is, you have Truth Guard as the weapon. It is a 1-minute cooldown. It releases a blinding flash of Truth Guard, causing 300% of attack power as holy damage to all nearby enemies, and reducing all damage they deal to you by 25%. So this one is a bit weird. It's obviously protection, but oh wait, this is protection. I thought this was holy for some reason. This is a massive DPS or this is a massive damage mitigation help, because 25% on all enemies is absolutely insane, and it's nothing more than that really. It's a damage mitigation. The kind of animation for it, I believe, is the same as a Word of Glory, that kind of thing. But again, don't quote me on that. So it's nothing flashy, and the weapon did look pretty cool because it was a big bulky sword and a big bulky shield to go along with it. For Holy, you have Tears Deliverance, and this is a 1.5 minute cooldown. It requires the Silver Hand, and it releases the light within the Silver Hand for 10 seconds, healing injured allies within 15 yards for 150% of their spell power every second. And allies healed also receive 20% increased healing from your Holy Light and Flash of Light. So this is a big heal. This is an overtime heal for Paladins, something that they've never had in their lifetime, I don't think. Priests have had Renew, Druids are obviously Hot Masters, Monks even have like Soothing Mists. Like every healer pretty much has some hots, but I think this is the first time Paladin ever got one. And I think it's kind of the last. But again, it's a nice heal over time. You get the increased effect from the healing. The hammer was absolutely chonky and it looked amazing. It really, really did. That's all I can say about it, to be honest. Retribution is Wake of Ashes, and this is a 30-second cooldown. It required the Ashbringer. Ashbringer obviously being the weapon held by Mograine, who was slain by his son, corrupted by the... corrupted by the Scourge, and so much lore behind the damn Ashbringer weapon. And I I've spoken about the Ashbringer a lot in terms of other podcasts, such as what they did in Old Hillsbrad, like the secrets in Old Hillsbrad, that kind of thing. Wake of Ashes is a massive, massive spell for Ret Paladins these days. In Shadowlands, in BFA, even in Legion, it was massive. So you lash out with the Ashbringer, you deal 650% of your attack power as radiant damage to all enemies, and reducing movement speed by 50%. Demons and undead enemies are also stunned for 6 seconds because it's the Ashbringer. It was the literal... Undead and Scourge and demons feared this weapon. So that little bit extra is amazing. Again, it is a very prominent feature with Ret Paladins. It's the exact same. It's an actual spell that Rets just get. It's not a talent. It is so big in terms of their cooldown. It is another sort of mini-go with, say, like Seraphim in PvP. It generates loads of holy power to heal yourself, to deal damage with. It's so utilised in today's game that bringing it in Legion was absolutely amazing, along with the weapon. And they couldn't have done a better job with the Retribution Paladin one, to be honest. For priests, you have Void Torrent, and this is for Shadow. It required Xal'atath, the Black Blade of the Empire. You raise your dagger into the sky, channeling a torrent of void energy into the target for 1,400% of your spell damage over 4 seconds. Insanity does not drain during this channel, and it requires Void Form. So Xal'atath, Black Blade of the Empire, was a blade that spoke and whispered to you. And it was a blade that was there during the Black Empire, obviously. And the Black Empire is something way before, our time in Azeroth. It's where the Titans came down and basically purged the land and cleaned up the land because the old gods were looking to corrupt the world soul of Azeroth. It was absolutely crazy. But Void Torrent is still a... talent for Shadow Priest, as it was a very good spell. It is a high damaging spell, and it is very much utilised to this day in many different occasions. For Holy, you have a Light of Toure, and what this does is it has 2 charges. It requires Toure, Beacon of the Naru. It applies Light of the Naru to the target, healing them for 400% of the spell power, and it also increases all the healing that you do by 25%. And it has 2 charges. So what this is kind of a watered down Apotheosis, or not Apotheosis, Guardian Angel. Guardian Angel is where your healing is increased by 100% on the target. It's a big cooldown, and it can also have a cheap death effect. So it's kind of still there, the spell, but for the most part it's been taken out because it's not a sort of damage reduction that you get constantly, because Holy Priests have a lot of utility, to be honest, at the moment. The staff looked cool, but again, it wasn't anything flashy, it wasn't anything great, it was just a straight up damage reduction and a big heal. It could have looked cooler if you gave it like a massive beacon, heal coming down from the sky, that kind of thing. For Discipline, you have Light's Wrath, and this is a 1.5 minute cooldown. It requires Light's Wrath, obviously. It draws upon the power of the weapon, dealing 700% of your spell power as radiant damage, and increased by 10% per ally affected by your atonement. So if you've got a raid group, you've got 10 people with atonement, which is pretty hard to do. You've got an extra 100% damage in there on this spell. It really did slap. Discipline Priests were no joke in Legion. They would win every 1v1 that they went into. If they were a good Discipline Priest against a good Rogue, against a good anything, they could probably win. It was actually kind of ridiculous because they had reflective shields, they had some very good damage, and it was insane. It was absolutely insane. And this spell is the one that you wanted to kick. This is a massive damage dealer to you if you're trying to 1v1 a priest. Honestly, it would deal with significant 20-30% of your health. It's no joke. Obviously, nothing like this is in the game now. Nothing in terms of like this big of a damage for Discipline Priests. Discipline Priests are still all very much about dealing damage to heal with Atonement, but nothing of this sort. For Rogue, you have Outlaw, you have Curse of the Dreadblades. This is a 1.5 minute cooldown, and it requires the Dreadblades, obviously. You invoke the Curse, causing each saber slash or pistol shot to fill your combo points. However, the Dreadblades will consume 5% of your current health when you use a finishing move for the next 12 seconds. So, obviously, rogues are built upon building up 5 combo points and then utilising the combo points for a finisher, which is like Eviscerate, Roll the Bones, or whatever. So, pop this, pistol shot, Eviscerate, pistol shot, Eviscerate, pistol shot, whatever. It was an insane burst. And if you're in PvE content, you're completely fine because you have healers topping you up for the 5%. If you're in PvP, you've got to be a bit careful because you don't want to get yourself too low with this. You want to make sure that you're killing the target. But it wasn't... It felt quite quick. It was very quick. Yeah, It was just absolutely insane how quick this was and how quick it felt for Outlaw Rogues to be utilising this during. For Subtlety, you had Gormor's Bite. Yeah, I read that right. It is a 1 minute cooldown and it requires Fangs of the Devourer. And what it does is it lashes out at the target, inflicts 500% plus 500% of your shadow damage and reduces movement speed by 60%. And it grants 30 energy as well over 6 seconds and awards 3 combo points. It's nothing too fancy, it's just a sort of single target damaging ability that sort of awards 3 combo points. I'm kind of noticing a pattern here. They did this with the Feral Druid legendary as well because it awarded 3 combo points and stuff like that. So, you know, I think they lost interest between Subtlety and Feral. I think someone fell asleep there. But nothing too fancy, it's just a little stab in the back, that kind of thing. Nice little damage increase, and the energy generation is obviously really nice. For Assassination, you have Kingsbane, and this requires the Kingslayers. It is a 45-second cooldown. It releases lethal poison within the Kingslayers and injects it into your target, deals 300% plus 300% of nature damage instantly, an additional 315% as nature damage over 14 seconds. And each time you apply a poison to the target affected by this, the Kingsbane damage is increased by 15%. So the Kingslayers are the blades that killed King Lane, and King Lane is obviously pre-World of Warcraft. This is actually World of Warcraft movie. Now, they didn't show it as... They might have done, actually. It is the weapon that killed King Lane in the movie. That is what it should be known as, I think. But it is where... I want to say Gamora, but that's from Guardians of the Galaxy. It begins with G. I've forgotten the name. I'm not going to dwell on it. It's where she stabs him, and pretty much you get these weapons. I'm not sure why they would not have these confiscated or like locked up. I'm not sure why they give them to a random sort of hero, as it were. I mean, it killed their king, but you know, it's whatever. It's more about the lore behind these blades than what the spell actually does. Again, the rogue ones are all very much just fast-paced, stab in the back and it's done. One button, you don't necessarily see anything flashy. It's more the lore behind the blades. For shamans, you obviously have a elemental, which is Stormkeeper. Now, this requires the Fists of Raden, and what it does is you raise the fist to the sky and absorbs all nearby electric energy, causes your next 3 casts of Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning to deal 200% increased damage. Now, Stormkeeper is still in the game. It is a very good talent for elemental shamans, and it's the best talent that you can pick. It's your burst damage. It's absolutely nuts. It shows just how good this ability was, and it was probably just as good in Legion, to be honest, if it's still in the game. That's all I'm saying about it, because I hate that spell. Enhancement, you have Doom Winds, And this is a 1 minute cooldown, and it requires Doomhammer. Doomhammer being the weapon of Thrall, which is the Green Jesus as we know him, the previous war chief of the Horde. It unleashes the inner power of the Doomhammer, causing all auto attacks to trigger Wind Fury, and increasing damage dealt by Wind Fury by 200% for 6 seconds. Now this is absolutely insane. Wind Fury is off the charts sometimes, but having it at 200% increased damage. Obviously Doomwinds is in the game still, but it's a more passive ability. It's not necessarily something that you pick as a talent or baseline. Well, it is baseline. It's a passive, but it's not a talent. This just is absolutely insane. You could really feel the power when you press this button, because you just see procs flying left, right and centre. You see so many numbers, you just lose track, to be honest. For restoration, you have Gift of the Queen. This is a 45-second cooldown, and it requires Sharasdal, Sceptre of the Tides. It heals up to 6 injured allies within 12 yards for 400% of your spell power, and increases their maximum health by 10% for 6 seconds. Maximum health is a bit weird, but I can understand it, because shamans in classic TBC are all about giving you certain buffs when you get a critical heal, that kind of thing. But it's just nothing too simple. You splash a bit of water on the target and they're healed for a big chunk. That's kind of it. It's nothing too fancy. And they don't really have anything. It's kind of like Riptide at the moment. It's, nothing too fancy for restoration. Shaman's not going to lie to you. For the Warlock, you obviously have Destruction, which is Dimensional Rift. This has 3 charges, and it required the Scepter of Sargeras. It rips a hole in time and space, opening a portal that damages your target. Now, this one was quite fun, because you're just opening demon portals, and like green fellfire comes flying out of them and hits the target, and you could open 3 at the same time. It was absolutely amazing. So this one was a bit fun, and it had its own unique sort of animation. This one was great. There's nothing really quite like it at the moment, I don't believe, in WoW. But it was great fun to see. You could see when a Warlock's sort of bursting. You can see if they're trying to do like sustained damage with these portals, that kind of thing. But it was great. It was great fun to see those little portals opening up behind your gnome Warlock and just seeing fellfire come flying out of them. It was good. It was good fun. Affliction, you have Reap Souls. And what the weapon that you needed was Ulthalesh, the Dreadwind Harvester. You consume all tormented souls collected within the weapon, increasing your damage by 10% and doubling the effect of the weapon or the weapon's other traits for 5 seconds. This one's not fancy at all. Honestly, it's completely different from the Destruction Warlock. You're just consuming some souls and getting a damage buff. It's nothing great. To be honest, it didn't feel great pressing it. You didn't feel like, oh yeah, we're really going to slap some people now, compared to like the Destruction where you see stuff happening. But, still damage increase, not too bad, not too shabby. For Demonology, you have Thalkeel's Consumption, and this required the Skull of the Minari. And Thalkeel drains 10% of your life from the demon from your demon servants, and unleashes the blast of shadow damage at your current target equal to the life he stole. Ulthalesh collects tormented souls from each of the targets you kill, and occasionally escaped souls it previously collected. So this is just a little bit of burst damage, nothing too fancy. Again, nothing like opening dimensional rifts and stuff coming flying out. It's just a simple, nice bit of damage there, throw that in. Very nice. For Warrior, you obviously have 3 specs. We're going to start with the protection. You have Neltharian's Fury, and this required Scales of the Earth Warder. The Earth Warder being Neltharion, the Black Dragon who went crazy, also known as Deathwing, from Cataclysm. And what this does is you enter a defensive posture, critically blocking all attacks with a stream of shadow flame erupts from your shield, dealing 6 times 100% of your attack power as shadow flame damage. And this affects all the targets in front of you. You can also use defensive abilities while this is active. So this one has a little bit of an effect. It's kind of like Skull Flame Shield, except you see the flames coming out of your shield. It's actually quite cool. It's quite a cool little concept. You can still use defensive abilities while you're breathing fire out of your shield. It was quite a cool little one, and definitely worth keeping. But sadly, I don't think they did, which is quite a shame, because it's quite clunky to sit there for 3 seconds, I guess, as a protection warrior and just channel this thing, and you can't do anything else. So if something gets dragged away from you, you've got to cancel your cast, or you've just got to sit there and wait for it to be fully channeled. For Fury, you had Odin's Fury, and this required the War Swords of the Valajar. It's a 45-second cooldown, and you unleash the fiery power Odin bestowed upon the War Swords, dealing 250% plus 250% of fire damage, an additional 400% of your attack power as fire damage to all enemies within 20 yards. This one, I believe, it had some sort of animation. It was more of a bigger whirlwind that you usually see. So you got the tiny whirlwind from just the spell Whirlwind, and then you've got a bigger, more impactful one that I believe this looked like. But don't class me on that. I'm kind of thinking a mix between the Rampage spell animation and the Whirlwind, but it doesn't quite work in my head. But I'm pretty sure nothing like this is still in the game. Rampage is obviously just the closest thing that you can get to it, I think. For Arms Warriors, you have Warbreaker. This is a 1-minute cooldown, and it requires Stromkar, the Warbreaker. You stomp the ground, causing a ring of corrupted spikes to erupt upwards, deals 350% of shadow damage, and applies a Colossus Smash effect to the nearby target. This one is still in the game for Arms Warriors, I believe. It is something very similar to like Warbreaker and stuff like that. So it's still very much in the game. It was very much a big part of PvP and still is. So this is why they probably kept it in the game, because Warriors are all about Mortal Strike, healing reduction, that kind of thing. They were the original Mortal Strike class. But that is going to do it for today. There's probably going to be a couple more parts on this, because I didn't even think that the Legion ones would take this long, to be honest. So we might do sort of a Azerite one as well as a Shadowlands Covenant one later. Definitely be on the lookout for Legion, class halls as well, because they were good fun. I could definitely do a podcast about that and just some of the lore behind it and stuff like that. But I'm going to stop it there. Thank you all very much for tuning in. As always, do check out the social medias, YouTube, Twitch as well. They can all be found on the website. Thank you once again, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.